Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of
Worst of the Video Game Industry.
That's right, this is where we take a deep dive into the biggest financial disasters in video game history and the idiots behind them. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, so you never miss another episode of
Worst of the Video Game Industry.
Now, with that said, let's get ready for the show. On today's episode... Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for spending this time with me. And let's get into another topic that you're not going to hear anywhere else because, this is very personal to me. Number one, I like talking about these things probably now in YouTube that haven't been talked for years. Number one, but they've never been approached from this point of view, my particular point of view. And today's worst of the video game industry is Hayao Nakayama. He was a president, right, or he was in charge of Sega Japan back in the day. Now, I'm going to go through the essay that I wrote that I shared with you on the community page. And, I grammarly AI'd it as best as I could to put my thoughts on paper here. But, as I'm going through it, in an essay, you can't really convey sometimes the emotion that you're feeling when you're writing facts down, because it's beyond the facts for me. If you love Sega, if you love the age of Sega where they were producing hardware, just the mere mention of this son of a bitch's name should just curl your stomach. Because this guy, let me tell you, let's go through it, okay? If you love the Sega Saturn and love Sega hardware, the hardware age, then the mere mention of this man's name should turn your stomach. The horrible decision of sporting a comb-over in public is the least harmful thought in this man's head when it came to Sega. And yes, the AI image on the thumbnail is not the real man. Here's the real man. Look at that comb-over boy. Geez, what is it? Let me tell you. This man was president of Sega in Japan. And even though most people in the industry won't say it because of professional reasons, of course, it's just not tactful to say it. Back in the day, the fact that Tom Kalinske made Sega worldwide, he made it Hollywood famous. It really stuck in this guy's craw. This guy was the kind of leader that demanded respect, as opposed to Tom, who commanded it, inspired it out of people. At least, the testimonies out there and how employees felt and what have you. And this was really at the center, in my opinion, right, what made the company split in two. And that's why, you had opposing forces in Japan of America, Sega of America, and Sega of Japan. It was also the reason that he sabotaged Tom's efforts to improve the Saturn's hardware. When a leader asks for help because his results or failures up to that point, you have to remember there was a before and after Tom when it came to Sega, right? He took him to the next level and he had to fight every single inch of it in order to take it to the next level. You ask for help as an individual, right? And then you get help, and you don't agree with the help because you know better. Let me tell you guys, in life you can't be experts of your own failure. People that never progress are always like this motherfucker right here, right? They fail and they ask for help, and then when help arrives, they don't want it because that new point of view doesn't align with theirs, right? They're experts in their own failure, and it's the same thinking that you have fat people, for example, that can tell you everything about dieting, right? They can tell you, every source of protein, how many calories they consume. They know everything, but they can't put it into practice. They can't put it together. Right? They're missing that one piece. And it's easier for a lot of, and you see this in a lot of CEOs and directors of companies, where they don't want to take any outside console when they're failing, because they, what worked for them got them to CEO, but now that they have to go to the next level, right? Or they failed and they need to get out of that, they don't factor that they are the cause of the failure, right? They are the cause of not progressing. Now, his failure came in not getting Sega out of the, into the U.S. market. And yes, you can do it in Japan, but it's a different thing to do it around the world. And that's where Tom's expertise in marketing and all that stuff came about. So his failure to listen and to recognize that you can learn something from any human, right? This is something that I've learned in life, guys. You can learn something from anybody, especially if you hate them, right? If you don't agree with them, right? One thing that made me a better listener was, I had this coworker who was really short and really loud, right? This guy was like about 4'10" and had to yell all the time. The joke was that, that the reason he was loud is because this dude was also ugly. And they said, well, if this guy didn't scream, nobody ever would pay attention to him as a kid because he was fucking ugly as a kid and he's ugly now and yada, yada, yada. But he made me a better listener, because even though he was really loud, once I, stopped and thought about what he was saying, 90% of the time, he was giving me good advice, right? He was telling me the truth, but it was so annoying the way he said it. I would just filter it out most of the time, and it wasn't until I became a better listener because I had to work with this guy. There was no way around it, right? Even though I hated him, working with him and listening to him made me a better person, right? Even though probably, outside of work we wouldn't do anything. Listening to his console in certain areas, right? He had many failures, right? This guy was an alcoholic outside of work. But when it came to work, he had a couple of good points, right? There's always somebody out there that no matter what their condition, no matter what their position in life is, they might do one or two things better than you, right? They do it exceptionally well, whatever the talent is. And those things are what people can counsel you in, or, you can learn from them. And listening is free. This is something that this guy never had. Now, people can blame the handling of the Dreamcast as, what killed Sega. But it wasn't. It was this man right here. I wish I was two people so I can hate this motherfucker even more. He killed the company for 2 generations, just like Matrick did for the Xbox One. The difference is, right, that Sega did not have the resources of Microsoft in order to endure this type of disaster. But let me tell you why this guy was even worse. Right? In the case of Matrick, he just didn't know what the fuck he was doing. He went in the wrong direction, and that's what caused it. And he fumbled the bag because he knew all they had to do was replicate the 360 and make it better. Let me show you how disastrous this guy was. Okay, the Sega Saturn was once heralded as a triumphant entry into the gaming market, the ultimate return, if you will. And it's really a case of, missed opportunities and strategic blunders. Right? At the heart of the downfall was Hayao Nakayama. I'll just call him Nakayama for now. Then the president of Sega Japan, whose critical decisions crippled the chances of Sega Saturn and Sega as a company in the fiercely competitive console wars. In this analysis, what I want to do, guys, is I want to show you 2 decisions that greatly impacted the future of Sega itself that this guy made with the Saturn. Particularly his dismissals of Silicon Graphics Incorporated, SGI, and Sony. And I want to explore how these steps paved the way for those rivals, Sony and Nintendo, not only to exceed them. Not only these 2 choices subtract from Sega, but added to its 2 main competitors. First of all, we have rejecting Silicon Graphics Incorporated. Right, one pivotal moment in Sega Saturn's troubled history was that Sega of America president Tom Kalinske, right, his nemesis, the guy that was outshining him, the guy that really made him look bad in his eyes, even though they wanted him, right? Sensing the opportunity to address the concerns that he had about the Sega Saturn, right? SGI, a technological powerhouse, offered Sega an innovative solution. CGI's founder, Jim Clark, he presented his new chips to Kalinske, and Kalinske saw the potential, right? So when Kalinske presented the chips to Sega Japan, Nakayama, the asshole that he is, declined the offer, citing the cost and size concerns, right? So this decision not only hindered Saturn's graphical capabilities, but inadvertently propelled Nintendo's success with a Nintendo 64 that embraced this same technology. They had it first, right? So you had the power in the Nintendo 64, you could have it, you pissed it away. Mistake number one. Mistake number two. In addition, right, he turned down Sony's collaboration. In another fateful decision, Sony approached Sega with a proposal to collaborate on a disc-based console, because as we know, Nintendo had stabbed them in the back. Right after having an agreement, they went with Philips, and they shared a common adversary in Nintendo. Yet Nakayama was unimpressed. Despite the enthusiasm from Sega's Tom Kalinske again, right? This guy knew the business, he knew the marketing, and this asshole would not let him be. Even Sony's Ken Kudaraji was excited about the deal. Nakayama declined it, and he cited Sony's inexperience in the console market. This rejection not only led to Sony independently entering the console market, but being one of the main reasons that Sega lost that war with the Saturn, because the PlayStation just outperformed them in the market. And it further weakened the position of Sega in the market at that time. You know, really, this was the nail in the coffin here. Now, look how these decisions affected, right? Nakayama's choices continue to haunt Sega throughout the Saturn development. Now, let me say this. The Saturn is my favorite console of all times, right? As far as design, as far as engineering, look how long it took to crack it, just to hack it, right? The people working at Sega, the team they had, the engineers, top notch, right? This is a criticism on this idiot, on Comb Over Boy, because he's the one that screwed it up. So after he turns down two companies, right, and facing the competition now of Atari, okay, Atari, in his mind, because this guy's a book nerd, right? He reads and reads and reads, but is not actively in the market. And it's just like investors that, you know, tell me, oh, I know everything about investing, you know, because I read this book and I read that book, and I ask them, have you ever made a trade? Let me see your options. What are you doing? They haven't done shit. They haven't invested a single goddamn dollar, and they're trying to tell you that they know No, that's like claiming that you know boxing because you read a fucking book. Go get punched in the fucking face, and then tell me that you know something. That's the kind of guy this guy was. Okay, so Nakayama's choices continued to haunt Sega throughout the Saturn's development. Faced with the unexpected competitions of the Jaguar and Sony's PlayStation, what does this guy do? He pushes for the 32X, which has some of the same hardware, right? Same technology as the Saturn, to compete with Atari, because he thinks Atari's a threat, right? Atari was but a shell of itself. It had no license, it had no competition. There was no need for the 32X to begin with, for starters. I haven't even gotten to the software because that really isn't important, right? You could always make better games, but let me show you how these decisions were so disastrous for this. Oh my God. I mean, I'm telling you, I wish I was 2 people so I can hate this motherfucker even more. So then he goes with that, which means now that you have to use parts on the 32X, you don't have enough parts to develop the Saturn, right? And while he's developing the Saturn, when he sees what the capabilities of Sony are, right, and how they're rendering 3D, now he wants to add another chip, right, late in the stage of development. What does that do? It completely screws the process over, makes it harder to develop for the console. And this guy had it in his hands. He turned down the chips originally because they were too expensive. This is the bad decision of somebody that doesn't pull the trigger when he's supposed to, somebody who doesn't listen to advice when he's asking for it and is giving it, and then when the people give him the advice, he tells them they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Now here he is spending more fucking money to accomplish what he could accomplish with a lot less money in the beginning. Can you imagine if the Saturn would have had the chips from SGI and the drives from Sony? What kind of machine we would have been talking about? The engineering that the Saturn had. You combine those 3 things, this would have been the most legendary console fucking ever. But instead, this guy screwed the company for this generation and the next generation. I don't want to hear squat about how, Sega dropped the ball with the Dreamcast, because by that time they had bled so much money, right? They wasted so many resources. And you can go into, the next, it doesn't matter. After Kalinske left, it really didn't matter. He left because he saw this and he was like, fuck it, why am I here? I'm giving you all the extra moves. Everything that I told you was going to happen, if you didn't follow my advice, fucking happened. And you're sitting here wanting results based on what? On your backwards fucking thinking? If you think, if you do the same thing over and over again, you get the same results, right? And this guy had it in the palm of his hands. This guy had everything in the palm of his hands, and he dropped the ball. That's why true Sega fans, true Sega hardware fans from the late 80s, 90s, from the Dreamcast, from anybody that loves Sega knows how much damage this particular comb-over boy asshole did. Man, I don't even like talking about this shit sometimes because it makes me so upset, right? These are the kinds of fucking thoughts that I have, right? Sometimes. And, and my wife's asked me, well, wait, why are you in a bad mood? Because I was thinking about this particular point in time. Guys, I really wanted to put into context for you. Because a lot of people talk about this history like, oh, Sega this, whatever. But in a business context, right? And you put the human element of arrogance, of this son of a bitch not wanting to take, Kalinski's advice, who was better at the job than he was. Sometimes you'll be in a team, guys. I've headed teams where my team is more talented than me, right? They're smarter than me. I'm just managing the team. And I recognize that they're going to move forward and do greater and bigger things. But for the meantime, what I want to do is I want to use them, right? Use their talents so I can perform the best, and it's going to make me look amazing, of course. But I do recognize their talent. That's the reason they're part of my team. Or else, why the fuck would I have them? Why would I bring them into my team so I could ignore all their advice, right? That's exactly what happened here. The damage this man caused to Sega itself, that really is what led to Sega getting out of the console business. And when that happened, I think we all lost, because Sega was a great, great hardware company. I enjoyed their consoles, still do. And I wish they would have had a better leader at the time. All right, guys. You see how passionate I get about this kind of stuff? I'm telling you, I wish I was two people so I can hate this motherfucker even more. Alright guys, if you hate him too, let me know in the comments. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
Did you subscribe? Did you hit the like button? What the hell are you waiting for? Did you subscribe? Did you hit the like button? What the hell are you waiting for?